Okay, looking at today's jobs now. I did weigh each of the pistons, and they're actually pretty well balanced to start off with. So there's 0.6 of a gram difference between them, between the lightest and the heaviest. So I may just remove a little bit from the inside of these three just to get them to match this one. They're surprisingly heavy as well. So 250 odd grams. This second head, I've started taking it apart. It's always a pain to get the studs out of these things. So some of them unscrewed easily, and then these other ones are stuck. So I've been using heat and just the homemade acetone and ATF penetrating fluid, which actually works pretty well. Mainly I'm using that because I don't have anything else. And I'm just taking the valves out, and I think I've shown this before, but this is just a little block I made to let me use the valve spring compressor to compress the valve keepers down. There goes the valve. So this just has a little wooden block on it that fits into the cylinder head to stop the valves moving, and then I can get the compressor on either side of it. One thing I accidentally did when I was heating up the studs was it was too much heat for the springs. It was barely any heat at all, but it's warped the springs. So I'm not going to be reusing those springs, and I wouldn't normally do that anyway. I've gone ahead and balanced out the pistons using my little drug dealer scales here. These work pretty well for this small stuff, and I was able to carefully grind the inside of the skirts just to remove weight. And one of these, I think it's this one, because the pistons are cast, they actually have omega cast into them. You can just see it there. This was the lightest piston, and I found I could just grind that away and just sort of evenly grind the inside of the skirts to remove material, and I've got them all down to pretty close, really. What's that? Sort of 0.02 of a gram, which is way closer than you need. Just out of interest, I measured the gudgeon pins, and there's more variation in those than there are in the pistons now. I think you kind of want them down to, I think it's within 0.1 of a gram, tenth of a gram. I can't remember exactly how good you need them. Obviously, the closer they are, the better, but it must be sort of diminishing returns. But it was really easy to get them that close. It didn't take a lot of effort at all. The head I have now fully stripped down. I did end up having to weld nuts onto some of the studs and apply heat and lots of penetrating fluid just to get them out. They were really stuck in there. The valves don't look too bad, and the valve guides all seem pretty good. All the threads in the head are good. So I've gone ahead and I stripped the paint off it, gave it a quick wire brush, and now this is sitting in the EDTA solution to de-rust it. Like I say, this is actually working. It's pretty slow, but the back plates I had sitting in a solution that wasn't as strong, and you can see it has actually started cleaning the rust off them. I think physically brushing the parts every so often helps remove some of the rust as well. It makes it work a bit faster, but at the moment I think I'm trying about 50 grams per litre in the solution, so I'll see how that goes. These other buckets are just degreaser, so I can degrease the parts first and then I wash them off with just water. But they're sitting in there. My old pliers and other bits and pieces, another few test bits and pieces are in there. So I'll see how that goes. Poking around with that second head, it seems in a lot better condition than the other one I've got over there. you can just feel that the water passages and the metal thickness is a lot better. I've also been continuing to clean up the back plates. It's just a matter of a bit of paint stripper and then some wire brushing, and then a bit more paint stripper, a bit more wire brushing, and eventually I'll get them back to bare metal. And again, these really need to go in the de-rusting solution. I should have some phosphoric acid sort of paint prep cleaner stuff arriving as well, and that will also take the rust off, and it leaves a kind of phosphate coating on the parts, which is good for painting over. So once that arrives, I can finish cleaning these up. They're not exactly flat, so I do need to get them back to a flat sort of condition first. And I think that's about it for today. I haven't done anything on the chassis. I'm still waiting for the dies and bits and pieces for that, and then I can start looking at making up the rest of the mounting pins in there. Today I've been looking at the rocker gear that came with the parts I got recently. I do have a set of rocker gear myself, but a lot of the parts are worn out, so some of them are going to need to be replaced or built up. I'm stripping the ones that came with the parts down just to see if any of these are more usable, and some of these look pretty good. So a couple of them look like they've just been sitting out because they're all rusted, and they were all completely locked up. I had to drill one of the brass fittings out just because it was stuck in there. But I think some of these will actually clean up really well and should be usable. The other thing I did some time ago was I actually bought some hard facing welding rod, TIG welding rod, because I was looking at building these up and then grinding them back again to get a nice hardened face on there, because this is what pushes on the end of the valves. So that actually pushes directly on the end of the valve stem like that. That sort of rides on there. So these do literally get hammered to death. And I think they are hardened, but people tend to grind them, and they can be ground down too far and go through the hardening layer. But you can sort of see on that one the hammer mark where the valve's been hammering on it. That's not too bad. I mean, you can see it, but you can't feel too much there. So those should be reusable. Trying to get them apart can be quite difficult, because the way it works is there's a shaft that goes through this casting, and this is where the rocker gear actually runs on this. So these two short shafts get pushed in, so if there's any corrosion or anything, they get stuck. But I've actually discovered I can just fit a rocker box in my little op-shop toaster oven, and I've found that if I heat them up, then they come apart quite easily. So I think that one's actually almost done. I'll take it out and just take it apart and clean it up, and then probably tomorrow night after work I'll have to figure out where the rest of the rocker gear is, somewhere in there, lay it all out and figure out what I can reuse and what I'm going to have to get new parts for. I'm tempted to get new shafts anyway. This one's not too bad. They don't feel too worn out. Again, it's one of these things where how worn out is too worn out and what's serviceable. So these don't feel too bad, but you can feel where they're scuffed up in the middle, which is actually, that could just be rust, because that'll be where the spring is, not where the rockers are actually running on the shaft. So maybe when they're on the shaft in the correct place, if there's no play in them, that's probably okay. I'm not really sure at the moment. You can get these things new. So the shafts, the rocker gear, the springs, and all that sort of stuff. I would probably, should be safe to reuse these springs, because all they're there for is they just sit in the middle and they just push the two rockers out to where they need to be. It's quite fascinating that it's all just running on the castings in here. There's no washers or anything in there. It just sort of these just sort of rub inside there. But I guess most of the force on them is, of course, up and down, not left and right. So that's probably why they don't wear out too much. I'm going to take that other one out of the oven before it gets too hot to hold and take it apart. Heating them up definitely helps. So I've got the shaft out of this one. You can see these are just sort of, they just sort of sit there with the shaft in the middle. So without the shaft there, they just pop out. There's the little spring that goes in the middle. They're probably okay to reuse. I mean, the only danger would be if they cracked, but I don't think they're under a lot of stress. There's the actual rocker arms, and again you can see where it hammers the end of the valve. They're still a bit warm. The other thing to note about these is they are handed, so you can see it's the same as that, but these are, if I hold the camera in the right place, these are actually handed. So apparently one thing to watch out for is cracking around this area. So this is how you set the valve clearance. You undo this little locking bolt and you can screw this in and out, and that's what sits in the end of the push rod. So they can crack somewhere in around here. I'm not sure exactly where. Like I say, I'm going to clean all of these up. Got a big pile of them out and see what can be reused. I also now have a pile of these rocker covers. These just have this spring clip, and that actually clips over the spring on the shaft here. That's what holds it in place. It clips on over that. That's what holds it on. One mod you see, it must have been an aftermarket part, is people use a longer head stud here, and there's a sort of aluminium clamp that goes down over the stud and pushes down on these to make sure they can't come loose. Which, if I ever set up my aluminium casting stuff again, that would be quite a fun little thing to try and cast, I think. And just quickly, for the people who've been waiting quite patiently for an update on this, I am working on the Enigma machine again now. I'll probably make a longer film to go into all of that, but now that I have my 3D printer set up, you can see I've been reprinting a few little bits and pieces, and so hopefully work will start on that again very shortly.